They found something buried in the ground that should have been impossible. Roman coins, thousands of them. But here's the thing, they were fake. Not counterfeits made by criminals, but fake money printed by the empire itself. And when historians tested the metal inside, they discovered the Roman government had been lying to its own people for decades. This wasn't just corruption. This was the beginning of the end. Imagine holding a coin in your hand that looks like silver, feels like silver, but when you bite into it, you taste copper. That's exactly what happened across the Roman Empire in the 3rd century, and nobody could understand why. According to records from the time, merchants started refusing payment, soldiers rioted in the streets, and families who had saved their entire lives watched their wealth vanish overnight. But here's the mystery that kept me up at night. Why would the most powerful empire in human history destroy its own money? The answer is hiding in plain sight, and it's happening again right now. Let me take you back to the year 200 AD. Rome controls the known world, from Britain to the deserts of North Africa, from Spain to the Middle East. The economy is booming. Trade routes stretch for thousands of miles, and Roman currencies trusted everywhere. A single Roman denarius, a silver coin about the size of your thumbnail, could buy a day's wages for a laborer. Soldiers were paid in these coins, taxes were collected in them, and every major transaction across 3 continents depended on them. But then something started to go wrong, and at first, nobody noticed. According to archaeological evidence analyzed by researchers at the University of Oxford, the silver content in Roman coins began dropping around 215 AD. At first, it was subtle, 90% silver instead of 95%, then 80%, then 70%. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it was too late. Here's what the history books don't tell you. The Roman Empire was fighting wars on every border, paying massive armies, building roads and aqueducts, funding a government bureaucracy that stretched across millions of square miles. And they were running out of silver. So Emperor Caracalla made a decision that would echo through history. Instead of raising taxes or cutting spending, he did something clever. He kept the coins looking exactly the same, but secretly reduced the silver inside. According to monetary historian Peter Bernstein's research, by 250 AD, Roman coins contained only 5% silver. The rest was copper, coated with a thin wash of silver to fool people. It worked for a while. The government could pay its soldiers, fund its wars, and keep the empire running. But then merchants started catching on. They began testing coins by biting them, weighing them, even melting them down. And when they discovered the deception, panic spread like wildfire. Suddenly, a coin that could buy a loaf of bread last week couldn't buy anything this week. Shopkeepers doubled their prices, then tripled them. According to accounts from Roman historian Dio Cassius, prices increased so fast that people couldn't keep up. A measure of wheat that cost 2 denarii suddenly cost 100. This wasn't inflation as we know it today. This was hyperinflation, and it destroyed the middle class overnight. But here's the twist that changes everything. The Roman government knew exactly what they were doing, and they did it anyway. Recently discovered tablets from Vindolanda, a Roman fork in Britain, show military accounts where soldiers complained about being paid in worthless coins. One letter, written around 250 AD, describes how a soldier's entire year's salary couldn't buy a decent pair of boots. The empire was literally paying its defenders with fake money. And here's what makes this truly haunting. The Romans had seen this happen before. 300 years earlier, during the fall of the Greek city-states, the same pattern emerged. Governments debased their currency. Prices exploded, empires collapsed. Roman scholars had written about it, studied it, warned against it. But when the empire needed money, all those lessons were forgotten. According to archaeological findings published in the Journal of Roman Studies, we now know that Roman citizens tried to protect themselves. They hoarded old coins with real silver, buried their savings in clay pots, and refused to spend anything of actual value. Sound familiar? The velocity of money, how fast currency changes hands in an economy, collapsed to nearly zero. People stopped trusting the system entirely. And without trust, without a functioning currency, the greatest empire in history began to crumble from within. The borders became impossible to defend because soldiers wouldn't fight for worthless coins. Trade collapsed because merchants wouldn't accept payment. Tax collection became meaningless because the coins collected were worth less than the cost of collecting them. Now, I know what you're thinking. That was ancient history. We're smarter now. We have central banks and economists and computer models. But let me show you something that should terrify you. In 1971, the United States completely disconnected the dollar from gold. Since then, according to Federal Reserve data, the U.S. money supply has increased by over 2,000%. 2,000%. In Germany during the 1920s, the Weimar Republic printed so much money that people used wheelbarrows to carry cash to buy bread. In Zimbabwe in 2008, inflation hit 80 billion%, and they printed $100 trillion bills that couldn't buy a loaf of bread. In Venezuela right now, people are experiencing exactly what Romans experienced in 250 AD. Their currency has become worthless, their savings have vanished, and their government keeps printing more. The pattern is always the same. A government faces a crisis, wars, debt, promises it can't keep. Instead of making hard choices, it prints money. At first, nothing happens. Then slowly, prices start rising. Then faster, then catastrophically. And by the time ordinary people understand what's happening, their wealth is already gone. According to economic historians who studied currency collapses across 25 centuries, there's never been an exception to this pattern. Never. Not once in human history has a government successfully printed its way to prosperity. Here's what keeps me awake at night. The Roman Empire didn't collapse because of barbarian invasions. The barbarians were always at the borders. That was normal. Rome collapsed because it destroyed the one thing every civilization needs: trust. Trust that your money will be worth something tomorrow. Trust that your government isn't secretly stealing from you through inflation. Trust that hard work and saving will actually lead to security. Once that trust was broken, everything else fell apart. The temples still stood. The roads still stretched across continents. The aqueducts still flowed. But none of it mattered because the invisible foundation of society, economic trust, had been shattered. And here's the question I can't stop asking. When archaeologists dig up our civilization 1,000 years from now, when they analyze our currency and study our economic policies, will they see the same pattern? Will they find evidence that we knew better, that we had studied Rome and learned nothing? Right now, governments around the world are creating money at rates that would have seemed impossible just decades ago. We call it quantitative easing, or stimulus, or necessary intervention. But the mechanism is exactly the same. Creating currency out of nothing, hoping confidence holds, praying the system doesn't collapse. The Romans thought they were different too. They thought their empire was too big to fail, too powerful to collapse, too advanced to repeat ancient mistakes. They were wrong. So here's my final question for you, and I really want you to think about this.